Hello and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar podcast, a podcast all about PC gaming. It is the 17th of March and it's episode 84. My name is Tom Senior and I'm joined by...
Marsh Davis, hello.
And...
Tom Francis, hello.
Hello, Tom. Where have you been and what have you been looking at with your human eyes?
I thought I told you this before I left. I went to GDC and then I went to Resd, and that was cool. While there, so I was going to GDC to show my game to the press and to go to GDC, which I would probably do even if I had no business there, because it's really good fun. And then I went to Resd to show it to the public. So I've had those two weird experiences. And in between, I did Valve's VR demo thing.
Oh yeah, is Graham wrong about that? How wrong is Graham about that? Let's go there.
Fight.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with that.
Oh yeah, so you didn't actually look at things with your human eyes, you looked at things with weird robot
cyber
eyes.
magic eyes. Yeah, lots of people had a very emotional reaction to it. Apparently, the guys showing it at Valve were saying, like, some people cry, some people hug them. And it definitely does have, like, I experienced a bunch of emotions I haven't had before. And it's amazing. The first thing to say is, like, it's way just leagues ahead of any other VR thing I've tried. The last thing I tried, I think, was the DK2 Oculus Rift. I haven't tried the Crystal Cove or whatever it is, whatever the other one is. But, yeah, this was just completely different in that, it's different in two ways. Like, one is that just the quality was better for me. Like, every time I've tried an Oculus, it's been sort of out of focus, and for some reason, the dev kits are really difficult to adjust the focus, so it's never been properly calibrated for me, so it's always been a bit, like, blurry, and it's super low res. And this, is just, got it set up properly, and it was, actually much clearer. And
There's something I forgot to ask last week. Does it have interchangeable lenses?
I don't know.
Because that's how the Oculus works. I can't wear glasses with the Oculus Rift, although I could,
right.
because it's big enough to fit my glasses in, but you just switch out a different focal...
Right. I was wondering if
lens.
that was possible, because I heard someone saying that they couldn't fit their glasses inside it, the Valve thing.
Right.
Which they couldn't also with the Oculus stuff. But yeah, and then the other way, which is different, is just doing a different thing, which is, it basically creates a space in which you can move around freely, and the first thing that completely blew my mind about it was that every time I try an Oculus demo, I strap, like every time I try it, it's been someone demoing their game that uses it. And I strap it on, and then I have to say, can you, like, move my hands to the controller? Because I've lost all perception of the real world. Like, even though I saw it a second ago, I could not tell you where it is now. And with the Valve VR thing, put it on and completely strapped in, can't see the real world at all. And I can see two controllers in front of me, and they say, just reach out and take the controllers. And it's so perfectly accurate that I can reach out in the virtual world, and they are where I expect them to be in the real world. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So that was like, whoa, it's just real. It's just reality. Everything here is just real. It's like the accuracy is just sort of perfect throughout, and I think that's the thing I've been working on for ages. I remember I talked to them like a year ago about it, because they were working on a thing and no one had seen it, and Oculus had their thing and everyone was excited about that, and they were saying that, the thing Oculus's thing couldn't do was if you move your head to the side, then it doesn't track that, it only tracks the tilt and that kind of thing. And at the time I was thinking, oh yeah, so if you move your head like 2 inches or something, it probably shatters the effect. And so that's the thing that Valve's thing will fix. I didn't realise they were talking about walking around a whole room and just like having this kind of play space. And, I didn't cry, I didn't hug anyone.
Did you experience the love of a giant whale?
I found it, so that's interesting because I'm terrified of whales.
Really?
Yeah, that's
a really weird thing to be scared of.
My darkest fear is being like in a completely open ocean, treading water, and then looking down and seeing a big dark shape of a whale going beneath me. I know they don't intentionally eat humans, but like things that are that big that they wouldn't even really know if they did, are terrifying to me. But this didn't scare me at all. It was incredibly convincing. I had the same experience that probably everyone had, which I didn't know what I was getting into, and so I was scaring the fish with my cyber hands. And then, I think they might like spawn the whale behind you or something. Like it's in some, I was staring at something else for ages when the whale was actually really, really close to me. And then when I looked around and realized it was there, I was, surprised and like amazed at the scale of the thing, but it wasn't at all scary. I think maybe just because of my like video game programming, even though it was very convincing that I was really looking at a big thing, I still didn't believe it was a ferocious creature that was going to attack me or anything. Not like well.
Did you try and mount it and execute it?
Not in that demo.
Right.
That was kind of my overwhelming experience. Was like one of like being a kid again, but not in a kind of like where we often say like childlike wonder, as if kids walk around staring in the world and like awestruck and amazed and too afraid to touch anything. But actually, kids are just like angry brats, and that's what I became in this virtual world. It was just like the best. One of my favourites was the cooking one, which Graham talked about last week, where you're just in a kitchen and you can pick up various food items and put them in pans and stuff and cut things with a knife, and you're tasked with making recipes. But I just was totally fascinated by physics, basically, just being able to pick things up and throw them around, and basically that combined with like complete immersion, like totally believing all the objects that are real, and also perfect motion controls. I think weirdly, like one of the most revolutionary things about it is motion controls, which we've had for a while, but they just haven't actually been that good. They've been like, or like even when Kinect is correctly tracking you, you're sort of seeing a representation of your hand on screen, and that's totally different to actually just having a game where you can, see your hands where they are in real life. And so it just gives this amazing sense of like, I'm in the real place, but there's no consequence to anything I do. I can just throw this fucking tomato at that fucking robot, and he thanks me for it for some reason. And then I can throw this knife at the microwave, and I can stab these two things together. And I get these two halves of a tomato, and I can throw them up in the air, and then throw another one at it to knock the other one out of the air, and just like stuff that you don't really do in real life for politeness reasons. And like sweeping my arm across the desk to try and knock everything over. I picked up a frying pan and tried to hit myself in the face with it. Because like, no consequences, woo! And it just goes straight through your head. I guess because they can't stop your hand from moving. I guess they could have the frying pan come out of your hand. But then there's a bunch of frying pans hanging up as well, and I tried headbutting those, and those react to your head.
Oh, right.
If you're knocking them around. And I got a bit carried away with my like, woo, everything's consequence free, and ended up punching myself in the face. Or hitting my controller into my visor. She's like, oh wait, no, there are still consequences to certain things you can do in this situation. But yeah, it was like amazing feeling of freedom, and it was funny. It just reminded me of like, this is also what we did when we first got physics in video games. We were like, whoa, let's knock over everything on that shelf. I can pick up this crate and just throw it at someone's face for ages. And it's probably what we did when we first discovered movable objects in life. Hey, look, it's a toy. I can throw it at anybody. I can throw things. Like my niece has just discovered throwing, and now she just throws everything, and it's really annoying. But that coupled with just the accuracy and fidelity of it is really interesting. The thing I didn't expect was that everyone's been raving about VR, and like I said, until now I hadn't had a great experience with it. I'd always had just a slightly blurry thing, and there were parts of it that I appreciated, immersion and being able to turn your head around and stuff to track ships in Elite. But when everyone was raving about this experience, I was thinking of it as like, oh, it's kind of like an experiential thing where, the sort of the input is going to get way more immersive and exciting and stuff. And Valve had said things like, oh, VR games are going to be so different to current games that the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to see some come up with the VR equivalent of Doom, where Doom kind of showed why 3D games are exciting, and someone's going to show why VR games are exciting in a different way, and it won't be something like Doom. It'll be they were saying like you need a slower movement speed, and you need like touching things is really good. And so I was thinking of it as like kind of walking simulators basically, and kind of like just things where you're very passive and going around the world, and I was still excited about that. I thought that would be great, like exploring cool worlds and really believing in them. But actually the motion controllers, the whatever you call them, are incredibly accurate, and that's a really new and exciting and cool experience, and it feels incredibly has massive potential for skill-based games. So I was saying I picked up 2 halves of a tomato and got a third half of a tomato between them, and then used them to bat the other half of the tomato in the air and kind of juggled it. And I can't juggle in real life. So there's loads of stuff you can do that's just, it would be really easy to make a very, very, a game with a very high skill ceiling. And it wouldn't feel kind of fiddly and tricky to master in the way that video games normally are, where it's like, a game with a high skill ceiling is you've got to press that button exactly when you should have pressed it. This can be, free range of movement with both arms and your head, if that ever factors into things. And that's really cool. I can imagine loads of great stuff like that. One of the things about it is that it's a fixed area in which you're free to move, and then I didn't play any demos with a really great way of moving you beyond that space, and so really I think the best fit for it would be something where it makes sense that you have an area in which you can move freely, but that area itself can move relative to the rest of the world, so that you can still go around the game world and experience new things and not be stuck in one place. So I think boats. It's just going to be loads of amazing boat sims in VR, because boats are a natural space where you can walk around, like bigger than a car. Or you can do spaceships as well, of course. I guess that's in some ways more exciting. But yeah, it kind of already feels like a raft, basically, that you can walk around in. And then because you have really accurate motion sensors too, people should be throwing things at your boats and you have to punch them out of the way. That'll be the revelatory, game-changing VR game.
I remember seeing one of the Valve engineers talking about that, and because they said they got the prototype hardware in, then kind of called down a load of veteran designers from within the studios to play with it and just write prototypes really quickly to see what they could do with it. And some of the ways they came up with to transfer you between environments was having you grow or shrink. You as an actual person, like growing and shrinking environments around you, so one step becomes a mile, then you shrink down into a new place. I imagine there are other ways, like if you complete a puzzle and a panel could appear and you step on the panel, then the world moves around you as the panel floats you to a new place that you step off it into the next puzzle room. You can imagine there are ways to do it.
Yeah, they all sort of break fidelity in some way, or they'll require a separate mode or something, I guess. I did play a demo, I hope I'm allowed to talk about this, where you sort of look to teleport. So you're in a big environment, and wherever you look, if you click the button, you teleport there. And that was okay, but it meant... Trouble was it meant that you never moved around, because it's like, well, I can just teleport everywhere. Click, 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 click.
Yeah, that's okay, though.
Yeah, it's not a problem necessarily.
I often think the blink is the one skill I would take from games and have in my real life.
Oh god, actually, yeah, if it worked like blink. This was literally...
The shitty road crossings in Bath with blink would just be great. Just sit there for 5 minutes waiting for it to go green.
Well, that's what we'll simulate for you in VR, Marsh. Perfect Bath traffic sim.
That's actually my ideal game.
So this was instantaneous teleportation, and there was no effect for anything. It was very much just kind of rough demo of a space. But if it was done like Dishonored's Blink, that actually would be really cool.
What else did you play out there, Tom?
I got to watch people play Heat Signature, which was fun, both the press and the public. The press, I now realise, having obviously been on the other side of that for a bunch of years, I don't think I appreciated when people were demoing things to me how closely they were probably scrutinising me for any and all reactions. Now I'm on the dev side, even though a lot of the people, everyone who saw it was someone who'd I sent them an email with a trailer and stuff, and they agreed to see it, so they're interested in it. I already knew they had some positivity towards it. I was still really, really keen to find out, are they really liking it? What do they think now? And some of them had a really obviously great reaction, so that was really nice. One guy, the guy who played it for Destructoid, the first thing he did was dock with a ship, which is what you do in the game, and go inside it, and immediately rush out from the airlock where you're safe into the danger zone with the guard looking at him. Guard fired, and I've recently added a thing where it goes into slow-mo as soon as someone fires a bullet at you. So he managed to dodge that bullet and then run into the next room where the guard was. The guard fired again, he dodged it again, and this time the bullet hit the fuel barrel in the room behind him, which blew up that chunk of the ship and then sucked them both out into space. And it was that was his first experience of the game, and I was like, yes! This is exactly what should be happening. And then I went to Rezzed and saw the public play it and patched it while they played it as well. So I did 10 patches in 3 days.
Wow.
And that was really good. We got some people who really, really clicked with it and really loved it. Lots of people who just liked it and then said, oh, that's cool, I'll be looking forward to checking it out or whatever. And then a few people who just really, really struggled with the controls. Just the basic space stuff, because when you start accelerating in a direction, that velocity carries on going until you accelerate in a different direction. So if you want to stop, you have to accelerate in the opposite direction to slow down. And that's intuitive to me. To most people have some kind of problem with it at first. They just don't quite almost everyone overshoots when they go for their first objective. It tells you which direction to go, and then they go way past it, and then they take a while to slow down and get back. And then most people get it in like a minute or so, and some people take a bit longer and then get it, and just a few people just absolutely did not get it. Just even when I was sitting there, I kind of, in some cases, I wanted to see them struggle with it, but then in some cases after it had gone on for a while, I'd try and explain, okay, so you've still got a lot of forward velocity, so you want to thrust in the other direction. And even then, it just didn't click ever. Mm. And so it was really helpful to actually see that happen, because I could see like the sort of minutiae of what it was that they weren't grasping. Mm. And it seemed to be that they always were assuming they were stationary, like when they start to thrust. So if something's to the left, they'd always thrust to the left, even if they had a lot of upwards velocity. And to me, it's obvious that you should thrust down a bit so that you kind of counteract that. But they could just never factor in their current velocity into what they were doing. Huh. So I've added a button that, while you hold it, will thrust with the normal amount of strength, but will do so in the direction that will help you match the speed of the thing you're approaching. So if there's nothing near you, you'll just try and stop. And if you're near a ship, then you'll try and match its speed. So if you're going half as fast, it will accelerate. And if you're going twice as fast as it will decelerate. And so that way you can kind of reorient yourself. If you're just going overshooting, you can kind of hold that down, match speed, and then slowly approach. And that seemed to work really well. The great thing about doing this is that I'm just patching it as I go, so I can actually see whether that fixed the problem or not. And there are other problems where I tried to fix them, and then the fix didn't work, so I did it a totally different way. And I think it was way better on the last day than it was on the first day. People responded to it better too.
Would the ideal development cycle just be a horde of strangers coming through your life every day until your game is amazing?
There's probably an argument for that, yeah. I think some developers do like weekly tests, get some people from the public in on Friday to play it and stuff like that. Although there was all really good feedback and I made a bunch of changes already and I'll make a few more. But then I'm stopping with usability stuff because I realised like you could actually spend your entire development just improving the usability of the thing you already have. You never add any new features. You never actually expand the scope of the thing. And so I'm realising like actually a bunch of things that I fixed usability for at EGX in September are actually features I've since scrapped. So that was a giant waste of time, wasn't it? So I think maybe I should just concentrate on adding features now and get the game into the state that it should be, and then not worry about usability for a while at least. But also, I didn't do this, but on the way to GDC, some people did Train Jam, which was, I think they board in Chicago. I guess they board wherever they want, along the way to San Francisco. And it's like a couple of days train journey, and on that journey they have to make a game. And they all get given the same theme, and the theme was on track. And so Alan Hazelden, who did A Good Snowman Is Hard to Build, and a bunch of other really cool games, who specialises in difficult puzzle games, I would say, made Train Braining. Which is a good title. And it's, I would say, his most maddening game. And most just brutally, insanely difficult. Like, just on level 1, I was just, this cannot be done. There's no way. It just can't be done. Look at it. It just can't be done. You've got to draw a track such that when a train goes along it, it will pick up passengers from a platform and deliver them to a destination. Mm-hmm. But it can only carry 2 passengers, and there's 4 of them, even on level 1. So it has to go to the platform and the destination twice, and then also, without ever crossing itself, get out to a specified location on the other side of the screen.
Without crossing itself?
Yeah. I actually managed to do it in the end, but there's like 20 levels, and they get massively harder each time. So I'm clearly never going to complete that one. One of the ones I was really impressed with was Adrien Dujon, I think. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Who made a game called Bounden, which is an iPhone game where you and a partner both hold different edges of the phone, and it tells you how to rotate it. So you got to, I don't know how it indicates this, but I think it has an arrow or something like a compass, and you have to get that arrow pointing in the right direction. And the way it works out is that the only way for you to do it is to kind of twist round each other and essentially kind of dance. And it's kind of to make you dance, essentially.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I hadn't met him before. I met him at GDC and I played his Train Jam game. And it's called Bridge Inspector or something. I think it's someone's name and then Bridge Inspector. And the whole thing is really beautifully rendered. It looks, it's all kind of in silhouette against the sunset. And it's a bridge. And all you do in the game is just say yes or no. Will the train successfully cross this bridge or not? And the bridges are randomly generated, and they're also made of physics objects. So it's like a series of girders lying on top of a series of stone blocks that are basically like pillars. And at first glance, they look like a real bridge, but then when you look closer, you realise actually that girder's slightly misaligned. It's kind of, the column's a bit too high here, so there's a bit of a break in the track. So I think the train might hit that and then go down, and whichever thing you say, yes or no, you get to see the train actually try and do it. And then inevitably, like I think about 80% of the time it crashes and burns and usually destroys the entire bridge in the process. But it's really good. It's really addictive. Even though that's all you do in it. It's, and I think maybe it should be balanced so that it's about 50-50, because right now the best thing to do is just always say no, because, when you try and guess intelligently, it's surprisingly hard. Some of the ones that look shitty actually make it. And I think the first time I played it, I was, my first 15 bridges or something, I said, yes for about 5. First time I was saying yes because I thought I wouldn't get to see it happen if I didn't say yes. Like if I said no, maybe the train would, normally if you told the train driver the bridge is not safe to cross, they wouldn't cross it.
I see, yeah.
But then once it was explained to me, they could say no, and you'd still get to see it. I think the first one I really thought that it definitely wasn't going to make. It did make. And then for the first 20, I think I just was 100% wrong every single time. The 80% that failed, I said yes to, and the 20% that didn't, succeeded, I said no to. Yes, I think that's about it from GDC.
Cool games. Where are they available? Those jam games, train jam games?
Yes. I don't know where from, but we'll find. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else I talked about. Oh yeah, the only other thing was Valve, and obviously that's not available. What have you guys been playing?
Tom?
Been playing Sid Meier's Starships. Or is it Meier? I never know. It's Starships. Meier?
Tim Stone rhymed it with multiplayer in a cartoon, so therefore...
It's called Meier, is it? Meier? I thought that was a different game.
No, Sid's surname.
Meier.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Sorry.
So he's made a game called Starships, and it seems like he's actually personally involved with this one, as opposed to just kind of having his name on it, and having, Civ be designed by mostly other people. And it's like a small game, in the sense that it doesn't even boot full screen on your PC, so
it's just literally small.
It's literally small on your screen, and it just feels like a fairly quick kind of. It feels like a prototype rather than a full game.
Is it out then?
It is out. And it's about £10, and I wouldn't recommend you buy it, even though it's kind of the structure of it's got potential. Essentially, you are controlling one fleet of ships, and you start out at your home planet, and then you're given a certain number of trajectories to nearby planets, and each one has a mission, which is essentially a turn-based combat zone attached to it, and then you can build factories on places that you've completed these missions at to upgrade your single fleet and make you better. And there are other federations who are kind of competing for space, and they'll come and do a mission on one of your planets and take it, and then you'll do a mission on one of theirs and take one of theirs. But it's kind of so simplistic that it fails to capture any of the fantasy of being a space captain. Every planet is just like a little ping pong ball with a bunch of numbers next to it, 4 different numbers reflecting food and energy and 2 other resources. And all of your upgrades are about maximising one resource or another until it becomes entirely a game about making numbers bigger. And that will let you make the numbers bigger on your spacecraft. And that changes the way they look to an extent, but it doesn't tell you anything about the ship. If you give it bigger engines, the engines get a little bit bigger, but you can't tell at a glance what a ship does. The design isn't especially exciting, even though spaceships. How hard is it? I love spaceships, but these are just oblongs, and some of the oblongs get a bit bigger every now and then. And then they're essentially a cluster of about 9 or 10 stats unto themselves, like missiles, lasers, engines, shields, armour. And it's almost too number crunchy, or it shows you too much of the maths that's happening. So it becomes a game about, a very simple game about making your numbers bigger, and none of the fantasy is realised whatsoever. And it's probably realised best by the diplomacy screens, where you can ask them a series of questions, and they'll just tell you everything about their empire. So you go, how many colonies do you have? And they'll say, oh, I've got 7. Here's where they are, 1, 2, 3, and we'll list them and name them all. How many ships do you have? Oh, we've got 10 ships. We've got 2, of this type of class and 1 of this type of class. Oh, great. So you've just basically told me exactly how to defeat you, just where you are, your capabilities, whether I should... there's just no sense that you're engaging with other entity. There's no sense that they're selfish beings. They're clearly just there as kind of... I feel like, Wilson on Castaway, where he draws that face on the beach ball. It feels like being approached by these space beach balls who are just there to amuse me. And they have no kind of will of their own whatsoever. So, that's very sad about that, really.
Oh, that's a disappointment. It sounds like, he also put his name to Ace Patrol as well, right? Which was also a similarly kind of scaled game from what you're saying.
Yeah, I think Ace Patrol was actually a mobile game initially. I think it might...
It did come to PC, I know.
I think it's come to PC, and it's also supposed to be quite good, but I've heard. I've not actually played it.
I don't remember liking it particularly, but I've completely forgotten the reasons why. But I do remember that I had... Again, it didn't fulfill the fantasy of being part of a crack pilots in World War... whatever it is. I think it's in World War I, actually. But it had a very strange aesthetic where it was ostensibly in World War One, but everybody in it was this these cheery portraits, members of the German Air Force giving the thumbs up.
I'm halfway through a series about World War One, and
there wasn't much of that.
We're quite mired in the horror of it, so that would seem a little bit weird. This is I think part of the problem with this is it's tied to Beyond Earth in that the affinities that existed beyond Earth exist in this universe as well. So you'll meet harmony leaders and supremacy leaders who reflect kind of tree-hugging, organics and synthetics who love technology. But it doesn't really change anything. As I say, they just, irrespective of who they are, they'll tell you everything about themselves. And, it's always the same stuff because the stats aren't varied. They don't generate interesting decisions. It becomes frustrating to have only one fleet when there are lots of enemy fleets buzzing around. So you're doing a lot of firefighting where they'll go and nick a planet. You have to send your own one and only fleet all the way back across your system to take it back. And it's just,
so you have planets and an empire yourself that you're building up, but you can't sort of leave things to defend them?
You can build defences, but they're kind of expensive. And it's better just to pour all of your money into your fleet. But it's just illogical that you can't build another fleet.
Yeah.
It's just not...
Do you think this was meta game stuff that was originally in Beyond Earth and got cut, or was possibly mooted as?
No, I don't get that feeling. I get the feeling that it was just like a prototype they came up with that they quite liked, and for some reason they've put it out super quickly. It's only £10, as I say, which is not worth that. And it feels odd, with another year and maybe fleshing it all out and making doing some extra art on it, changing some of the systems. Maybe it could have been all right. It just seems like an odd decision to.
When did it come out?
Last week or the week before.
I guess I've been away, but I literally haven't seen a word about it. I didn't realise it.
They announced it in January, I think.
Yes, I did see it before release, but I hadn't seen anything about it since release.
It is a shame. I want to know what they're really working on, whether it's could it be XCOM 2 or whatever else they're doing at Firaxis. Because Beyond Earth was a little bit disappointing as well. And I want more good Firaxis games. Like XCOM, which was fucking amazing.
Yeah. I think I saw a headline somewhere, maybe on PC Gamer actually, saying that calling Invisible Ink the closest anyone's come to XCOM since then, which I think is a good summary of why I like that game.
Yeah. You just thought that people would just jump all over that formula after Firaxis.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess it must be really hard. I mean, there have been a bunch of indie games like that, haven't there? What did you play? Something to do with half-sight?
Halfway.
Halfway, that was it.
Yeah, that's not... I suppose that is an XCOM-ish game. More of an RPG as well. But also there's that not very good Double Fine XCOM-alike, which was set in a strange fantasy world. Massive Chalice.
Yeah.
Massive Chalice.
Is that finished?
I don't know what state it's in now. It was in early access when I played it last, so I don't think it's come out of early access as far as I know.
I was quite looking forward to that.
It was alright. It was only okay. A lot of problems with it, but I suppose it's what you expect from early access, but it was quite expensive for what it was.
I talked to a Paradox a few weeks ago, and because their publishing arm is always looking for the next quintessentially Paradox type game to publish, and they said there was a phase when they were turning down one XCOM-alike a week.
Oh, wow.
And it was always it's XCOM but this, or it's XCOM but it's underwater like that other XCOM.
Wait a minute.
And then also, I think, is it Xenonauts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they looked at that as well, and they said, well, this is just XCOM that is XCOM. Like, there's not even a differentiating thing here, so they didn't pick it up, which is possibly a mistake, because I've heard it's great.
I have quite a lot of capacity for XCOM likes. I think I could have a few more of those quite happily.
Absolutely.
Halfway was really good, I thought.
Marsh, what have you been playing?
I've been playing 2 games actually, but I'll only talk about one of them briefly. The one I'm going to talk about briefly is Ori and the Blind Forest, which is I'm going to make one of those grand pronouncements about its art style. It's the best looking game ever made.
Amazing.
It really is fucking amazing looking. It's like a 2.5D, although those kind of definitions don't really matter anymore, since everything, like, if you're going to do a 2D game in Unity, you might as well make it 2.5D, because even if you have 2D assets, you can align them in a kind of perspective, so you have parallax. Anyway, it's a 2.5D Metroidvania style game. You play this little kind of cute sprite thing that is somehow related to a tree, and you need to make the tree happy again, because everything's gone bad in the world. But it's really, it's just the most kind of delightful, evocative way of telling what is obviously quite a retarded story. But like the opening sequence of it, it almost reduced me to tears. It was so emotionally manipulative, but I couldn't. There was
You weren't seeing it in VR, were you?
yeah, a giant whale turned up right behind me, and I wept like a baby.
Into the sea.
No, I think what I found really touching about the opening was it's ostensibly a cutscene, I guess, but it makes it interactive in a way in which it fully involves you in the story, and it does this quite clever thing where you'll be moving through this world, which is in any totally familiar to gamers as like a side-scrolling landscape, and you run across it. But it kind of blends narrative, a narrator's voice explaining what's going on into that, and also seeds in it visions of memories of things that have happened. And it does it in quite a kind of elegant way, and I wish games would do that kind of stuff more often. Like, games can take you outside of space and time. The thing that films can do and books can do is kind of allied time, basically. But games can do that with space as well. You're not constrained necessarily to the environment you're in. And I guess that was one of the reasons I found it quite powerful, or at least involving. I mean, it's just fucking gorgeous looking.
Is it like, what do you do when you're running around this world?
Well, it's it's hard to say exactly what you do beyond it's a Metroidvania game. Like, I mean, you're exploring this landscape,
combat.
and yeah, there's combat in it, and you kind of upgrade yourself, and then you can reach other areas. But it's ostensibly, I keep saying the word ostensibly. It's very much a hardcore platformer. Like, it's fucking hard as balls, really hard balls, and some of it is just it's quite grueling to get through. But in a way which is gratifying. It also allows you to make the mistake of going in directions in which you're ill prepared for, and you'll spend like half an hour just beating yourself repeatedly against this set of obstacles. And then you get to the other side, and then there's just a gate that you can't go through until you unlock it later. And you're like, fuck you! And that entire section will be much easier when you learn double jump, which you do later on. So it's kind of, it's gratifyingly a lack of kind of, a lot of those games have become, like platform puzzlers, but in a kind of slightly weak source way, like, Child of Light, which is a very similar game in that it has 2.5D-ish landscape with beautiful kind of art, and it's set in a forest as well, largely. That had a lot of kind of just puzzles that are just the most kind of basic entry-level pull switch puzzles that are just not interesting to engage with. Whereas this, it just said, you're not going to care about that kind of stuff. We're not going to put puzzles in there just to pad it out. We're just going to make it really, really kind of high skill ceiling on the platforming that you need to do to actually get through the section. And it seems rare that a game would do that, and also match it with what is an art style that you would think would suit children in some way. I mean, just because it's just so appealing and gorgeous. But so that's really, I really recommend it. I think it's pretty great. so far.
It has animation by James Vincent, doesn't it?
It does, yes. And he's also the guy who did the Firewatch stuff, and he is also the guy who did various Team
TF2
Fortress.
Dance Party.
And what's the latest thing that he's done, Tom?
A weird series of initially it was like sort of game design sort of proof of concepts, like short videos where he showed off ideas for this game. And it's really interesting to see an animator show their ideas, because I'm a designer, so if I wanted to tell you about an idea, I would just describe what it would do. And he just kind of, I look at it and think, oh, you're basically done. It's all there, isn't it? But of course it's all just hand animated, and it's a like arena combat game, which are both just like lozenges, like little capsule shaped. It's the shape of what the collider for most people is in games. If you go into Unity and you're making a character, it gives you a capsule collider, and that means it's a shape of a pill basically, but standing upright. And so James decided, like, let's just make them actually be capsules, and then the collision box will be perfect. And they're just, his style is very, well, when it comes to things that can stretch and squish, he stretches and squishes them a lot. So, like when you jump, you go really, really tall and thin, and then when you land, you squish in a little puddle. And these capsules have swords, and when they attack each other, they can, if you manage to hit, if you both strike at the same time, your swords clash. If you manage to swipe when they don't swipe, you cut them in half. And then they are two little wibbly balls, and one of them, I think that you just control one of them at that point, and you have to control that one to kind of wobble around the floor until it meets the other one, so that they can reform back into full size, which is awesome. And you can also throw your sword. It looks like it looks as if it probably plays a bit like a top-down Nidhogg. In that it's just about swords, and it's just about the exact precise timing of when you attack and when you throw and when you dodge and that kind of stuff. And you can also jump on the enemy and like squish them that way. And then his latest video, maybe you should describe this one, because it's...
Fuck! Yeah, no, it starts off as what it seems to be a tutorial sequence with all these lozenges making their way through this kind of vast red cavern.
What kind of madman makes an entire game tutorial but doesn't actually make the game tutorial? It's just an animation of a game tutorial, what it would be like if you made one.
But it's such a good tutorial as well. Like, you can see him, I mean, obviously it's all kind of pre-canned animations, but you can see the characters kind of learning what they need to do. Like, there's like a jump pad, there's all these other lozenges making it this way through this cavern at the same time.
Which is a really smart idea for a tutorial, and I
you can
totally want to copy that now. Yeah.
And then succeeding, and you know exactly how they work.
Yeah, so you get to an obstacle and they're all trying to break through a certain wall or something, and then none of them are doing it. And so if you were able to pull it off at that point, you figured out you had to ram it with a certain move or something, and you did it, you'd feel great for doing better than all those chumps. But also, if you get stuck, eventually one of them does it, and then you realise, oh, it's that thing. That's what I have to do.
You're becoming timing it so you can become a fat lozenge as you hit a pressure pad, and then somehow that pushes down. Yeah, it's really good. And then, no point spoiling the end of it, but there is a very surprising denouement to this 3-minute long video, which is one of the best tutorials in games. And the animations, despite being lozenges, are just amazingly expressive.
Yeah.
How is that possible? How is he so talented? Let's kill him.
Best game never made.
Been playing Rayman Legends recently.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely sumptuous, beautiful 2D artwork, which surpasses even Rayman Origins, which is just like a feast of colour. And it's like...
Ori does piss all over those games.
Oh, really? They're good. Oh, wow.
Beautifully animated urine just splashing in the most dynamic and...
James Benson, why?
But yeah, that's amazing. Actually, most of the reason I'm playing it is for the colour and for just the sheer kind of artistic pleasure of it. Like, as a game, it's kind of just it's like a combo game about pressing jump and then grab, then jump, and then this beautifully animated kind of gust of wind will sweep you up to the next bit. But functionally, what you're doing is a lot like remember the 3D Prince of Persia games, where they'd have these extremely elaborate kind of platforming sections, but all you're actually doing is kind of, you're in canned routes that you occasionally press A to flick onto a different route, and it very much feels like that. I was playing Darksiders 2 again recently, which I very much like for some reason. But again, that has the same kind of platforming sections, and I do them, and I really enjoy them, even though I know I'm not expressing myself at all in this sequence. It's just completely...
It's like a very long QTE.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Sometimes.
It is, because I hate QTE. I feel like a hypocrite, because I hate QTEs. Because I feel like they're not, properly interactive. I'm not really, expressing my play style. But I love just the beautiful animations of clambering along ledges and vaulting up things and watching my character kind of just dominate the environment in a way I never ever could.
I guess there's a certain amount of like anticipation in that when you're playing. If it's chaining together platform moves that you already know, then you can see, oh, there's a gap coming up, so I've got to press jump now, and this is a wall running bit, so I can hold forwards and do this. So you kind of, there's skill to it, and you kind of, there's some logic to, next I know I'm going to have to press this because of what I need to do to solve this. So you're solving tiny little puzzles, like it's showing you something, and you're thinking, what's the solution to this? And you do it. Whereas the thing I find offensive about QuickTime events is it literally says, press A. And so why? I don't know. But now, because you told me I've got to press A, so I just press A, alright.
Yeah, it feels like there's a kind of a conceit around platforming, like there's a shell of pretense around it that makes it acceptable to me in a way.
The reason QTEs are so objectionable is because they are interruptions in some way, right? And I think it's because they break your experience of the game, essentially, as this kind of your fluid one-to-one matching with the controls. When it says, press A, well, A doesn't mean anything to me in this context. So I'm just literally pressing a button now to escape this boulder. And that's, for the rest of the game, you're one with the controller. You know that A means a certain thing, and you don't need to think about it.
Yeah, that's very true. Maybe slightly sad about some games. Like, as soon as you see it like that, it's hard to intellectually enjoy the challenge. Also, it's because there are degrees of failure to it. You either successfully beat it or don't. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I just feel it makes it feel like even more of a press B, now press forward, now press X kind of test.
So no, there are games like Dust Force, which are platforming games with you obviously have to complete in a particular way, but there are also speedrun games, right? And there's an elegance and perfection that you can aspire to there, which makes them different from a QT, I suppose. Yeah, certainly that in Ori. It's all about the environment. I suppose there's some room for expression within the combat in it, but otherwise you just have to just do things right, basically.
Yeah.
Is it the one where you're like a glowy thing and you jump onto some it's really hard to describe, like some squares that are hovering in space, and then when you walk around them you kind of change, like whichever one you jump off affects how gravity affects you after you jump?
I've not encountered that yet in the game, but then I'm probably only a third of the way through it. So
I was watching a video recently for a side-on platformer that had a gorgeous art style, and then I was surprised to discover that it had combat in it, and then the puzzles were about that kind of gravity mechanic.
No, that hasn't occurred yet. I imagine that would be the main thing if it was in it. The other game that I really want to talk about is Starcrawlers, which is in early access now, and I also really like. And it's kind of, I suppose it's a Firefly-ish RPG about being hoodlums in space, basically, taking on missions from various corps who you track your relationship with, and there's thousands of corps, it seems. That's an exaggeration. But you kind of assemble this crew of very kind of interestingly different classes, and then you go on missions which play out. I haven't played Legends of Grimrock, but superficially it seems a bit similar in that you are the first person in these in 3D environments, but you can only move through them square by square. They're essentially kind of comprised. They're randomly generated space dungeons, basically, and mining colonies and abandoned space stations and derelict hulks and kind of usual fare. But you move through them square by square, and you encounter enemies in them, which also move square by square. And then you have a kind of abstracted combat mode where you run into an enemy, and it pulls out to a different view, and that singular enemy turns out to be like 5 enemies, which is always irritating. I don't know why that's still in games. Like, it should have a number over them which tells you what they are. Anyway, but what makes it really good is that all the for one thing, the environments are quite interesting, despite being randomly generated. I think there's quite enough. They've done a good job putting a lot of variety in it as far as the early access build goes. And it's in early access for 6 months, during which time one of their main goals is to add more variety to the levels. So that's kind of promising. They're patching every day, which is really good, unusual for an early access game. And the thing I like about it most is that the skills that all the different classes have are really, really exciting and completely different from one another. They all share a similar kind of feature by which they they have attacks, as you imagine, and then they also have, each class has its own kind of resource pool, which in some way empowers their attacks, but the relationship between its empowerment and the attacks you do is different for each class.
Right.
So, for example, the Void Psyker, which is the class I chose at the beginning because it has a face that looks like a fishbowl. It's really cool. Every time you attack, you pick up void energy, which then empowers your attacks. So the kind of more you attack, the stronger you become, essentially. But if you become too strong, you explode. So you need to kind of constantly try and not overload yourself and find release valves for your energy in other ways. Or there's like a Force Psyker who has a kind of fixed pool, which then slowly recuperates, but not enough, not quickly enough to make her or him useful in combat over a long haul. But she can like sop up loads of damage if you equip her right and all these other things. But it works. The combat works on a time unit system, which is not a vernacular I was actually familiar with until I played a bunch of time unit games. But apparently it's a kind of JRPG staple that I don't really play JRPGs, but it's where you have like a time track, gesticulating in a way which is completely pointless for our audience, a time track at the top of the screen, and you have all of the people who are involved in the combat are represented by portraits somewhere along that time track. And as they proceed towards the front of the time track, obviously they attack. But and once they've attacked, once you've chosen the action they'll take, they'll be reshuffled back into that line, but only so far back as the number of time units that their chosen action will take. So you can have like quick attacking units who'll be shuffled back only a little bit, and then you'll still be able to attack before people at the end of that time track. And some of the classes in Starcrawlers just use that in a really interesting way. So there's a cyber ninja character who has a special attack, which his kind of the main thing for them is that they build their empowerment pool is very specific to particular enemies. So the more they attack a particular enemy, they build up a combo kind of score, which they can then use to deliver an amazing attack against that singular enemy. So that's great if you're fighting like mega beasts who have just a massive health bar and are going to take a long time to come down. But they're rubbish in combat with like multiple people who will be relatively weak, because by the time you've killed one of them, they've not built enough combo to actually make any use of that. But the thing that they do is that they can also initiate a special attack which allows them to kind of ignore whatever time units their attack normally would take and just vault over the next character portrait. So they always attack the next one after the next turn. But if they vault over an allied portrait, then suddenly they become their attack is amazingly empowered. And it's a kind of, the whole game is about kind of just juggling characters along this time bar and trying to find the best ways to kind of empower them and then stop other creatures attacking before they proceed to the front of the time bar. And it's just really well thought out, and all the skills that you can then unlock are just really interesting and totally asymmetric, and they've really put a lot of time in. Completely unbalanced at the moment, but that's kind of exciting. I've only played a few of the units. There's a prototype robot who's one of the skills is that he can recite haikus to inspire the team. This is probably inspire the team actually. But his thing is that he gets a higher chance of getting critical hits the more you use him or use his particular skills. But he also has a higher chance of just malfunctioning and forgetting what he was doing.
Excellent.
I love that futuristic equivalent of the Bard. That's an idea, I guess that's what they're going for. Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one thing I liked about Torchlight was that the different classes use their energy bars differently. I guess Diablo 3 has this too.
Yeah, it's not unusual. It's just particularly pronounced, I think.
Yeah, I really like that. I like because for sure each class is going to be its own playing style, even if their skills are kind of similar. They would just be such a big thing. Are they all the ones you mentioned sound quite unusual? Is there like a standard warrior type class?
No, there is I haven't played it actually. There is a soldier class, but I don't know how interesting that's going to be. There's also an engineer class. There's I think I can't remember what it's called now. Smuggler class, which apparently makes it less likely that his colleagues will survive. I don't know. The thing is, that all the descriptions of the classes when you hire them are given in kind of slightly ambiguous flavor text, so it doesn't tell you exactly how they work. But it's interesting. So I don't know how that works. I don't know how the hacker works or anything. But I imagine the soldier class is like, they arrange the choice of classes in a kind of line vertically, and right at the top is the cyber ninja, which suggests that it's not really a suggestion that that's the class you should pick first, but they've obviously thought about the order in which these classes should appear, and soldier's way down the bottom. So I don't know. Maybe maybe that's
maybe he's the hardest of all.
Yeah, who knows?
It's not just alphabetical.
Oh. No, it is. Oh, maybe it is. I don't know. Is it? Oh, I can't disprove it. Anyway, it's great, and I don't know how expensive it is at the moment. It only comes out tonight, actually, the night we're recording.
In early access?
In early access,
Right,
yeah. But
Yeah,
it's
sounds good.
really cool.
I will play that when it's finished. Like a joke. Oh, there was one more thing I played at GDC. And I don't know its name. And you can't play it. And it might have been a dream. But I was in a bar, and a man came up to me, who's a friend of a friend, with a briefcase. And my friend said I should play the game that's in the briefcase. And he opened the briefcase, and within it was a arrangement of old-fashioned technology and glowing lights and dials that was immediately appealing and captivating. And the main part of it was like it's almost like a periscope, like sort of a thing that you put your eyes to, like both eyes, and look down into a tunnel. And next to it is a rotary dial phone. And it took me a while to understand how to play it. But you look into the visor thing, and right down the end of the tunnel there's a sort of circle of, I guess, LEDs, different lights. And the circle is initially, I think, just either all green or maybe all dark. And then on the rotary dial, you have to dial 0. And then once it's finished spinning, that's you pinging, like your radar. And that means enemies show up as red lights in the circle. So some of the LEDs go red. And then to shoot them, you have to dial the rotary dial to the appropriate number that corresponds to their position around the ring. So, if they're exactly at the bottom, you dial 6, and if they're exactly, well, that would be on a clock face. I don't know what it's like on a rotary dial phone. But, you just go by position, and you have to hit them, like, one by one. And then once you've played, eventually I died. I think I didn't kill enough of them quickly enough or something. And your score is printed out on the miniature printer inside the briefcase as well.
Oh, no way.
And then you tear it off, so I still got my, you got 7 kills. It's by this guy also, his name is Jerry, is it? And he made a thing called the Choosertron, which is another mini printer, but it runs text adventures and Twine games. So you can, I think he had a bunch of his own adventures on it, and basically it has some buttons at the front and it prints out, you are in a room with exits to the north and south, and then you press 1 for south and press 2 for north. And then you press those buttons and it prints out what you did and the next response. And so the great thing about it is that once you finish playing, you just tear it off and then you keep a record of your whole playthrough, and it's kind of reads like a story.
That's cool.
And my friend Nika, who was previously on this podcast, has one of her adventures in a custom-built Choosertron now, which is awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I guess I'll find out what the name of that dialing to shoot game is. We'll put it in the show notes. But it won't help you much unless you run into Jerry, whose name might not be Jerry. That's the end of my story.
Shall we move on to questions?
Yes.
You got them.
Yep, I do. I have one here from Evan James, which I thought was interesting, but I don't have anything to say about it. I don't think any of us do. So I'm just going to read it. Evan writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, a game can infect your experience of the real world, like finding you drive too fast after playing a racing game. But have you ever had the reverse happen? No, is the answer to that. I often listen to gaming soundtracks while I work, especially one particular soundtrack with a lot of techno music appropriate to my job. I want to know what his job is now. One day I went back to play the source game and felt like super productive office man whilst making robots fight each other, because the game's battle anthem had become my work music, and hearing it put me in a work mood. Now I can't play that game without feeling like it might be interrupted at any moment by 2 meetings and a progress report. Has your real mundane life ever been invaded and taken over by a gaming experience like this? or have it ever invaded and taken over a game experience like this? Cheers, Evan James, Atlanta.
I can't think of an example where it's happened exactly in that order. I mean, obviously, I bring all kinds of foolishness and neuroses to the games I play, but I can't remember ever a game infecting my real life and then that feeding back into a game in such a dramatic way, actually.
No, I enjoy the kind of Clockwork Orange effect that's going on there. Of just like a Pavlovian association that is just locked into your psyche forever. It's probably a good thing that I've not experienced too much of that. I don't know, like sometimes I have things on in the background when I'm playing a game, and I'll come to, like, if Formula 1 is on in the background, I'll start thinking about race cars when I'm playing, Guild Wars 2 for some reason. But that will just be like an imagination thing. It won't affect my behaviour. Anyway.
Menthol Penguin tweets to say, just sliced my thumb at work, not serious. To help me feel better, what's the most suffering a game has inflicted on you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh there. It's suffering.
It's okay because the thing that would make him feel better is to hear about our suffering. So.
Oh yeah, no, fair
it's okay to laugh at his.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry for your thumb.
There's got to be like an RPG where I've lost a load of progress. I mean, recently, Far Cry 4, I played the entire fucking grueling intro section, and then when I quit, it just forgot all my saves and to do it all again. There was one really painful moment where I was previewing Deus Ex Human Revolution, and obviously really into it, although struggling with it because it was an Xbox-only preview event, so I was having to play on a gamepad, which I don't do for first-person shooters. And it was a whole first section, was like about 3 hours long, I think. I think everyone else played it. I ended up coming away from the event being able to say I played it for like 3 hours, and everyone else only played it for 2 hours because it just took me longer to play it. So I was still playing after everyone else had left, and they were like packing up the whole event and stuff, and like the cleaners were coming in and things. But they were fine with me playing it. They made it clear I could just keep playing till I finished. And I was right near the end. There was a bug with that build where it kept corrupting my save game, so I already lost my progress loads of times, and I had to load like a much older save game and go back to the start. And I'm just about to finish it, and suddenly just the whole screen goes black, and the Xbox is off. And one of the people packing up the event has just unplugged the whole unit. I was quite nice about it. I was just like, he was really, really apologetic, and I was like, oh, that's okay. I mean, I was close, and I have been reset many, many times already, but that's okay.
And then he mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah, no one ever heard of that guy again.
Tom?
Suffering? I don't know. I mean, I bruised up my fingers a bit playing games a lot, especially when I used to play a lot of Soul Calibur 2 with my friends, when the kind of button mash becomes so frantic that you don't like sore thumbs afterwards. As on the grand scope of suffering, it's not really that far along. It's like having an itch you can't scratch. Like it's that level.
I once had to walk I think it took me about 20 minutes to walk home because I got so engrossed playing Hoplite on the bus that I missed my stop, and the stop I arrived at, I had no fucking idea where I was.
What a nightmare.
Again, yeah, no,
Yes.
Suffering is a strong word for that.
Wasn't there another game you played?
Oh god, well, reviewing MMOs.
Oh, right, yeah.
Generally.
All MMOs.
Yeah, even the good ones are horrible if you had to poop stop them. Adults Online was the worst. Deeply average, free to play Russian MMO about dwarves on floating islands and lots of boars you have to kill endlessly until legitimate despair seizes your soul.
I'm sure
But let's not talk about that.
Yeah, I think I've the psychological reasons blanked out the memories as the most traumatic game experiences I've had. Although I'm sure the walls of Edge's demo room have been somehow scarred by my many screams.
Must be help messages.
Yeah, I used to feel I got told off once because people were having a conference in the next room. I was swearing too loudly, screaming, bellowing, wailing like an animal.
Amazing. That's what bad games do to Marsh.
They do. I think Quantum Theory is probably one of the worst games I've ever played.
Which one's that?
I have no idea what it came out on, but it was a real big pile of shit. Yeah. Third-person shooter. Kind of like, I think it was a Japanese development studio trying to do Gears of War, right, but with a bit more kind of third-person brawling in it. And it was... There's like a support group of reviewers who had to review that game now. Me and Chris Schilling, we know. we know the pain.
What was it, Quantum
Theory.
Quantum Theory, if you made that game, you made Marsh scream.
He did.
Know that.
Yes. Yeah.
I think TF2 is probably the game that's made me angriest.
Oh, wow, really?
Like,
But you love that game.
Yeah, that's why. Because it's like, to get angry at something, you sort of have to care to some extent.
Right.
And like, if you're reviewing it, then that's sort of, to some extent, automatic, because you've got to get through it, so you're invested in that way. Whereas, like, if you just bought something and it's shit, then if it's shit enough, you can just say, well, fuck this, I'm just not going to play it. But TF2, because I love it so much, when I got really into it, the problem was, like, it's fine when I'm expecting to fail, and early on that's just what you expect, and I would switch classes and stuff to play the classes I didn't know as well, and I'd expect to die, and I would die. But then, once I'd played, I guess, like, I think Spy in particular is just, it's such a high stakes game. It's, if you go undiscovered, then you automatically kill at least your target and possibly several other people. And if you are discovered, you will achieve nothing in your life. And it's all over. And so anything that can make that go wrong. It's such a delicate balance. Like anything, a bullet that can glance you or just like, something that someone bumping into you and that kind of thing can trip it all off, and then your whole life is ruined. In the game. Depending on how good you get. But yeah, I've broken at least one mouse over TF2.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. Yeah. Recently, I've been playing a lot of HOTS recently, and actually, I've not been getting as angry. Sorry, that's Heroes of the Storm.
Alright.
As in, Dota, but for adults, basically. And
that'll be an uncontroversial comment.
It's great. I love it, and I haven't been as angry with it as I often am with games forever. But the thing that annoys me most is that I annoy me most when I play it because I'm such a fucking idiot, and I can see my idiocy just kind of coming towards me like it's fucking impossible to escape tidal wave of dumb. And like I'll see the rest of my team who are also equally stupid, just running into like a mob of 4 enemies over and over again, but individually. I'll be talking to Rich Stanton over Skype, saying, "Well, these fucking idiots that we're with, these noobs. Why are they feeding? Why are they just running in one by one? It's so stupid." And then I'll go and do it. I'll go and do it, having just said that, because I'll be like, "Well, I suppose this is the strategy now, is it?" Then, and then I'll run in and die. I'll be like, "Why did I?" And Rich was like, you just said not to do that. I'm like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm an awful human being.
I think it's bloodlust in those games. You see a big fight happening, it's like, the enemy's there, I'm just going to fucking fight him. I'm going to fight him right now. Even if I'm just a healing class, I literally don't have an attack. I'm going to charge him there. I'm going to get in his way. I'm just going to block his view. I'll do anything I can.
And then Diablo eats you.
Yeah, not again. I hate it.
Patrick Johnson writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, a few weeks ago you read out a question about games that made you feel uncomfortable, and the discussion strayed pretty close to stomach-turning violence. However, I was wondering if you could discuss games that seem to influence your thoughts or mental habits in ways you're uncomfortable with. We've all had game brain leak into the real world, driving immediately after GTA or jogging immediately after Hotline Miami. But have you ever seen a game exploiting this to make you feel less than human, the monster of horror instead of the victim? A game you've described as disturbing. The obvious answers are Papers, Please or Manhunt. Manhunt, in particular, crossed a line from mundane ultra-violence into a place where you started to share the cache's love of the hunt. The lethality of your victim, somehow a flimsy excuse for stalking a guard, in order to power up an execution move, in order to brace a knee on his neck and saw off his head with a piano wire. Jesus Christ.
Pretty grim games.
I was also particularly wondering if anyone had played Beautiful Escape Dungeoneer, an obscure indie game from 2010 that uses dating sim mechanics to recruit desperately lonely victims for your serial-killing, snuff film-making main character.
Oh my god!
Jesus Christ. He puts a footnote there to say it's also apparently a critique on the RPG maker community itself, as per Kieran's article at the time, which we can link. All 3 of these are games that turned my stomach and made me walk away from my keyboard. TLDR, what games have disturbed you with an ability to make you feel less than human through the medium of psychological manipulation rather than just violence alone? Don't let the Daily Mail get a hold of this one. Keep plodding on, Patrick. P.S. I'm not a lunatic. Even witnessing a shouting match in real life inflames my inner peacemaker and demands that I loudly and at the sidelines to make the conflict go away. Which always works.
It's interesting. I'm not sure the games that have affected me most are the ones that have necessarily set out with some kind of attempt to manipulate me in those ways. The ways that I find games most disturbing, the ways in which they normalise things which are abhorrent to me. For example, the vast number of extremely bellicose games like the Call of Duty series, which normalise killing large numbers of de-individualised Arabs. I find that really worrying.
Mine would be Call of Duty. Modern Warfare 1 with the AC-130 section where you're just you're completely detached from the violence. You're seeing it through a sort of heat vision camera, and you just click to make the people explode, and you see them fly out as ragdolls. And it's really, well, for the time, I can't remember if it's still impressive these days, but at the time it was really, really convincing. Just exactly like news footage. I had seen. I couldn't remember where, but there was like a sort of...
it's sort of low fidelity, that kind of video footage anyway. Right?
Yeah, and there's a well-known leak of real footage of soldiers doing this, and they're killing people, and you can hear them commenting on it, and they're kind of saying, "Oh, that was a good one," and stuff like that. And
what's so disturbing about that is that the developers thought that was cool.
Yeah, and I had that, because I was, like, I felt really harrowed by it, and was really like, God, it's just so...
Well, they've done a brilliant trick here.
I really thought it was intentional. I thought that was how I was supposed to feel. And I had talked to... Jason West and Vince Zampella were in the office at the time because I was reviewing it, and it was their office, and in the corridor I was saying, I just played that section. God, it was really harrowing. So it's awesome, isn't it? Isn't it so fun? Like, holy shit! I did not get the message you intended there.
Yeah, I was going to say war games as well, but more generally, especially ones based on real world conflicts that happened within living memory. Especially because, like, reading back, just the way that militaries encourage people to volunteer for war involve the same kind of glorifying messages that are present throughout entertainment products, games especially, and their depictions of war. So, and there's a very real element of things like COD being looked at by US military as a way to entice new recruits into the armed forces, and that as a use of games is deeply disturbing, and it suggests that there is a kind of a dehumanizing element, or an element, propaganda element to those games that are very effective enough to be parroted by, real military institutions.
Do you know if there are Russian-made games which have a similar kind of bellicose view of the world? Because there's, at the moment, there seems to be Russia being a terrifying place, obviously, but there seems to be a kind of resurgent propagandist movement for essentially Russian imperialism, but coming through the kind of media that we're very familiar with, like YouTube, and very kind of simply put together YouTube viral videos and things like that. I'm surprised that there isn't kind of like basically a mirror for COD, but in Russia. Because weirdly, like a lot of the games that come out of, well, the Eastern Bloc in general, tend to be quite rueful sort of games. Like, I guess a lot of them come out of Ukraine, which is obviously not Russia.
But, you hear me?
But I'm surprised that maybe there are COD-likes in Russia, but they just don't make it over here.
It's possible, though. I think the game market's really different in Russia. Like, free-to-play is absolutely huge there. And they love World of Tanks, for example. World of Tanks is absolutely massive, and that there's a kind of partisan element to World of Tanks as well, where there are shitty British tanks and like US tanks and Russian tanks. There's an element of kind of patriotism to the way that some of those communities pick their tanks and get behind them in the kind of chats that happen in World of Tanks. But I'm not sure if the kind of the big budget studios exist in Russia in the same way that they do in the West. So that you wouldn't have
missing
that
a trick there.
Maybe so, yeah. Putin Shooter 5000. I'm not sure that exists yet. But I'm sure they have the studios that produce those kind of games.
It's only a matter of time, though. I was watching in one particular video, which I'll put the link in the show notes for, which was... it was all about... It was just a really kind of flashy, cool-looking video about how, it's like... We are the occupiers. We are Russian. We are occupying your city-state. But actually what we've done is every time we've occupied a place, we've made it better. And all the places we've left have got worse as a result. So you better get used to it. We are occupiers. We are Russians. And I was watching this thinking, well, that's completely fucking crazy. But then it occurred to me it probably wasn't that different from the sort of message, the kind of, the Team America kind of message that the COD games and other things were putting out around the time when it got satirised by actual Team America, you know.
And also, like, colonial apologists had the same message. It was the, you know, yeah, sure, we'll take your shit, but we'll make it, you know, give you infrastructure, etc. It's the same argument being parroted from different parties, different ways. But games are becoming an aspect of that, like a way of communicating those ideas now. I think that's pretty clear from COD, which is kind of just the most mainstream example. I mean, yeah. But it's worth digging in. I might go digging for... pretty sure there are examples of games created or part funded by the US military.
Oh yeah,
like
that's right.
shooters. There's loads out there.
I think Call of Duty is partly bankrolled by them, isn't it?
America's Army was their thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There are a few of them, but we'll link them in the show notes. It's very interesting.
Patrick actually had a footnote, or follow-up to that email to say, as a recently realised follow-up point, perhaps this is the alternative answer to Ludonautic Dissonance. Anyone else got a drink?
Good luck.
Rather than removing jarring violent space mechanics, remove niceness. GTA 4 would be less dissonant with less violence, but it would also be less dissonant with Manhunt's protagonist. So, be mean but don't hurt anyone?
I don't know. Actually, I think the last GTA game, I mean, that certainly turns my stomach, where there's the torture scene in GTA 5. I kind of think that was... I don't think that was the developers saying, isn't this cool that, you know, you can pull out people's teeth. I think they were really rubbing it in players' faces that the kind of actions that they enjoy and take part in are extremely violent and unpleasant. And they were saying, well, do you really like this? Look, see what it looks like when it's really up close and personal, you know? You're not mowing down, you know, hundreds of policemen, but you're just taking apart a single person, and somehow that becomes a lot more unpleasant. But I think it's kind of a shitty thing to do to your players in some way.
Is that really what they were going for, though? I mean, or were they going for be Jack Bauer for 20 minutes? I
don't know. I kind of credit them with A, greater intelligence than that, and also B, to a degree, hatred of the gaming populace. I think they're a very cynical bunch, and they're also very... they've been chastened so much by the media response to their games. I think that they have quite fragile egos in some ways as well. Like, I'm not talking about the entire fucking business here, but certainly the people at the top. I mean, they've been blasted by the media for a period of time, and that's got to have some kind of psychological repercussions to the kind of games you put out, I think. And I think with GTA 4, they tried to make a game which was also, I mean, it was obviously extremely violent, but it was also more serious about its violence in a way which prompted a fan reaction to say, we just want meaningless violence. And I think maybe in GTA 5 they were kind of addressing that to some extent, while at the same time kowtowing to that need as well. Like, it's a kind of much more jolly game in some ways.
It's interesting now, the BBC are actually doing a drama based on the creation of GTA 1, which is going to be a 90-minute drama.
Written by Guy Cocker, or at least
it's
developed by Guy Cocker.
Developed by him, but it's written by... Guy Cocker said on Twitter that it's written by a proper, like a BBC writer.
All right.
So
I'm sure Guy's a proper writer.
Well, no, sorry, a proper script writer.
Yeah, you're right.
As far as I know, Guy hasn't published any scripts.
I'm really looking forward to that. I think it could be a period set thing about Scottish game development could be fucking fantastic. Like Halt and Catch Fire, but in. It's
also going to cover the furore around the release of the game as well as part of the drama. So that I find it really interesting because there's given how primitive the original GTA looks now, there's no way to depict that without making kind of the moral panic. The people generating the moral panic look in some way foolish.
I don't know, I think it's actually, I mean, it's not any less, maybe slightly less sophisticated looking than Hotline Miami, but not by that much. Like, I mean, Hotline Miami recreates quite a lot of the kind of retro style of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. But based on the blurb of the BBC release, it sounds like it's going to be largely positive about the creators, which they claim that GTA is the finest digital victory that Britain has accomplished since Bletchley Park.
Fuck off.
And they hail GTA's creators as geniuses, quote geniuses. So yeah, it's going to be entertaining, but at least it's going to be hopefully like a sensible, positive look at game creation. Like, you know, they could turn Rockstar into Rockstars, which is all the guys at the top of Rockstar ever wanted to be. These Rockstar game creators. Not the BBC
Drop
can
the
do
hint
it,
right there in the name.
but not the BBC can do it. But it's kind of cool to have it not just be another debate program bashing games again. See so many fucking versions of that.
Yeah, showing some kind of articulacy about the nature of games and how they're produced to be interesting.
Yeah, making maybe like game creation aspirational in some way, saying that this actually people will make dramas about you if you're really good at this.
Yeah. Did you do a follow-up about the making of APB, though?
That's going to be like the existential despair.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for questions. We had a bunch that were aimed specifically at people who aren't here, so we haven't read those.
Yeah. Actually, we want to ask a quick question ourselves. Bloodborne is out next week. It's not a PC game. It doesn't look like it's going to be because it's Sony's property. But we are all going to be playing it to death and basically thinking about it all the time. And we're thinking about doing a separate podcast unto itself, maybe with maybe Rich Stanton will be interested. Can I invite him? Chris will be playing. I'll be playing. You'll be playing Marsh.
Oh yeah.
Well, we might do some streaming stuff. And we wanted to ask if that was a thing you would like to listen to or watch. Normally we're about PC games, but Bloodborne look like it's going to be fucking amazing. So, you know, we're
Got to play it.
Yeah.
Get that Miyazaki in my veins.
Hot Miyazaki goodness. That's all the questions we have questions for. You can send more questions to questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can question us on Twitter @crateandcrowbar, or contact us individually with your private thoughts about the nonsense we've said. I'm Tom Senior @PCGLudo.
I'm at Marsh Davis. It's Davies.
I'm at Pentadact, Pentadact.
That's brilliant.